So I'll just hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zah. Today we have a very special guest, Kevork Almassian. He's a Syrian Armenian journalist based in Germany. And I have him on the show because what's happening in Syria, everything happens so fast. And I would rather listen to someone who have deep ties in the region. As I understand, Kevork, you still have your family is from Aleppo, yes?
Yes, my family from Aleppo. I'm from Aleppo. We still have beloved ones now stuck in Aleppo.
So maybe you can give us a quick rundown what happened, because it's quite shocking and how swift Aleppo just fell into the so-called Syrian rebel hands. Maybe you can give us a quick rundown on what exactly happened in Syria in the past week.
Every day we receive new information about what happened in Aleppo, and it may sound on the surface shocking for many people, but it was anticipated. And I've been reporting about it for weeks now, about this attack on Aleppo, because it was clear that from the types of trainings and the videos they were posting that this was about offensive attack on Aleppo. Now, what happened basically, a decision has been made by Erdogan to conquer territories in Syria and especially Aleppo, because he was trying to meet with President Assad for the past year and a half. And for those who don't know, there have been many meetings on a security level between Syria and Turkey on the borders between Syria and Turkey in a town called Kesab. And the security personnel were meeting regularly and discussing Syria and how could they find a political compromise, let's say. But Erdogan was adamant and determined, and he wants to meet with Assad. And even the allies of Syria in Russia and Iran were exerting pressure on Assad to meet him. And I want to mention during the last election in Turkey, Moscow and Tehran exerted maximum pressure on Assad to meet with Erdogan because they wanted to give him this photo op. They wanted to they wanted victory for Erdogan. They didn't want for the opposition to come. Assad rejected because Assad is not like just a stubborn politician. He said, if I'm going to meet with Erdogan, this has to be, as you put the cherry on the cake. Like there are so many issues that has to be solved before meeting with Erdogan. And the primary issue is that Turkey has military presence in the country. It's illegal. So they're considered occupation forces. So we're not asking Erdogan to withdraw the forces tomorrow, but he has to send a clear schedule and a commitment to the allies of Syria or the mediators, Iraq and Russia, that eventually, after all these talks, he will withdraw from Syria, and he will support Syria army liberation of Idlib and the rest of the country. Now, on the surface, Erdogan said he doesn't mind that, but he never sent this formal commitment to Moscow or to Baghdad, and this is confirmed by Iraq and Russia. So Assad rejected and refused to meet him. And if Erdogan accepted to send this commitment, Syria said that they will also cooperate with Turkey to achieve its national security concerns, one of which is the presence of the Kurdish militias on the borders between Syria and Turkey. And Syria said we could turn the clock backwards, and that this means the Syrian army deploys the forces on the borders, and the Kurdish militias go 30 kilometers to the south, away from the Turkish borders. So these were the, let's say, the diplomatic talk between both sides. Now, in the past, I think this was 3 weeks ago, when there was, or 1 month ago, there was a meeting in Doha, in Riyadh, between different Arabic and Islamic leaders about Gaza. Erdogan tried to meet Assad again, and Assad rejected. And I think this was the turning point for him, that he wants to take this photo with Assad. He wants to tell to his people in Turkey that he finally agreed with Assad, and they will send back the refugees to Syria because there is a big economic burden on the economy. So he wants to give something to the people. But Assad doesn't believe in rhetorical achievements. He wants concrete actions on the ground, and Erdogan refused to do that. So in Erdogan's mind, he wanted to finish this issue with Assad before Trump comes to power, so there would be certain deals with Syria, with Russia, with Iran to manage the affairs in Syria. And when Syria rejected that, Erdogan took the initiative. It's a bold initiative, and he unleashed this army of Al-Nusra, Islamic Turkestan Army, Nuruddin Zenki, and these groups have a track record of decapitations and serious crimes, like ISIS-like crimes. Why he did that? Because he saw a window of opportunity that Trump is coming and he wants to withdraw from Syria. And if he doesn't have the upper hand in Syria, then any sort of compromise they could reach about Syria, Turkey won't have the bigger piece of cake. So he unleashed this army to conquer Aleppo, expecting that when Trump comes to power, he would tell him that he can fill the vacuum of the Americans when they withdraw from Syria. And Turkey is a serious military power which can impose its presence when the Americans withdraw. So he's presenting himself as the alternative to the American forces in the country. Secondly, Erdogan, there was a mutual ground between Erdogan and Israel in this case. And this is very important that many people miss because they don't know the geography of Syria. Now, if we see the pattern of this al-Nusra offensive on Aleppo and then moving right away to the southern governorates, especially to Hama. For those who don't know, they have to put the map of Syria in front of them and see the M5 highway. And when you see the M5 highway, they were advancing on the M5 highway to Hama, and they wanted to conquer Hama. Now, if Hama falls, which they couldn't do it up until this moment, the next governorate is Homs, which is going to be very easy for them to conquer. Hama is the center of the Syrian military might. So the plan is to conquer to Homs and then separate the Syrian coast from the rest of Syria. And when you separate the rest of the coast from the rest of Syria, they have tried this in 2014 by attacking the coast from northern Latakia, and they committed genocide against the minorities there with the hope of triggering a sectarian war in the country between the Alawites, the Christians, and the Sunnis. This is in their mind. So they're trying to repeat that project again, but with different approach this time. So you completely separate the coast, where the majority are Alawites, and separate them from the rest of the country, siege them basically. Then they only have the Mediterranean left, because northern Lebanon is in the hands of pro-American political parties. So if they also close the border there, then you have like an island. So they wanted to cause a sectarian war in Syria. Secondly, if they do that, they will create a siege on Lebanon as well. So the siege on Lebanon is a major strategic goal for Israel. When there were talks with Hezbollah to establish a ceasefire agreement, the United States and Israel sent a letter and message to Assad through Jordan. And the Jordanian foreign minister was in Damascus a few weeks ago. And he delivered the American message that if a ceasefire agreement is reached, or when it's reached, it is expected from Syria to participate in the ceasefire agreement. And the Americans interpret the ceasefire agreement as an opportunity to siege Hezbollah, cut its supply chains, degrade it, weaken it, and completely destroy it. But if Syria doesn't cooperate, Hezbollah will continue receiving reinforcement, material support, tangible support, military support from Syria, some of which comes from Iran, but most of them come from Syria. Most of the weapons of Hezbollah are either from the Syrian stockpile or they are manufactured in Syria and passed to Hezbollah, or the knowledge is passed from Syria, Syrian research centers to Hezbollah. And some of these weapons arrive to Lebanon in spare parts. They're just small parts and they manufacture them in southern Lebanon. And the United States and Israel know this. So they offered basically Syria incentives to participate in sieging Hezbollah by saying that they will lift some of the sanctions and they will revive the Syrian economy and they will allow the Emiratis and the Saudis to invest in Syria. Something that the Emiratis and the Saudis did, but very minimally, because they were afraid of the US sanctions. But the Americans said they will turn a blind eye and they will allow the rich Arabic countries to invest in Syria. And Assad rejected that request. Hezbollah is a strategic ally of Syria. Hezbollah is very important for Syria, like even from an opportunistic point of view, not geopolitically. Without Hezbollah, Syria doesn't have a leverage in Lebanon. And without Hezbollah, there is no longer an armed struggle against Israel, which means Israel is now completely focused only on Syria. So they wanted to do this deal with Assad and he rejected. So when you see how these militants were advancing to hammer homes to encircle Lebanon, you understand that this was an attempt by the Turkish intelligence and the Israeli intelligence to impose a military siege by these terrorists on Lebanon, something that Assad rejected to do himself. So in this case, Erdogan and basically Netanyahu are cooperating under the table. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, the rooftops are there just yelling against each other and calling each other names and saying that they are enemies. But Erdogan is basically I think, a very, very hypocritical leader, but he's able to sell his image as some sort of resistance against the Israelis. And I think that more people should know about the true nature of Erdogan, because he has enormous support in the Arabic world and in the Islamic world. And he's, considered like the Sultan of the Ummah, and he's going to uplift the Islamic Ummah. Erdogan is basically, he's a transatlantic stooge, and he's a NATO country. He plays on the contradictions in the region to gain more from NATO and more from Russia and from every side. But he will in no way or shape run against the interests of NATO. He blackmails them from time to time for some financial support, like he used to do with the refugees. He blackmailed Europe and said, look, Habibi, I sent you 2 million refugees now. If you don't want me to send another million refugee, then you have to pay me $8.8 billion. So this is how he does. He's just a businessman. He's blackmailing everyone for financial and geopolitical gains in the region.
Confucius says, listen to one's words, but watch their action. When Erdogan speaking against Israel, I watch whether Turkey cuts off the oil supply to Israel, because a lot of the oil supply that Israel depends on is coming through Turkey. Turkey itself does not produce oil, but a lot of the Syrian oil, stolen Syrian oil, is being transported to Iraqi Kurdistan, and then where it's being sold as Iraqi oil, re-export to Turkey, and then through Turkey, Turkey's port, Sihan port, get transported to Israel. I watch whether that oil supply line gets cut off. When that oil is continued to flow to Israel, I know Erdogan is still full. It's all empty words.
Yes.
And I think you mentioned something about Azerbaijan's oil supply also goes through Turkey to Israel.
Yes. In the 90s, when they imposed the sanctions on Iraq, there was a program in the UN called Fuel for Bread. So basically, they were buying, because there was an embargo on Iraqi oil, and they used to buy to get the oil and then give Iraq food so that the people do not starve. In this case, I think there is a deal between Israel and Azerbaijan. It's fuel for weapons. And Azerbaijan exports 40% of the fuel of Israel. It sends it to Turkey, and Turkey transports it to the Ceyhan port to Israel. So 40% of the Israeli war machine operates today on Azeri oil passing through Turkey. And Turkey continued its supply of the fuel even when the genocide was ongoing and still ongoing in the Gaza Strip. And it supplied them even though when they were bombing Lebanon. So basically, Erdogan is dealing with Israel improving its military war machine. And this is all happening under our watch. We're watching it. You can see it. We can detect it. And 60% of Azerbaijan's weapons come from Israel. And Israel considers Azerbaijan, which is a proxy country for Turkey, as an advanced satellite state in the Caucasus, which they use this country as a spying hub against Iran. So the Mossad operatives, they have a freedom to operate in Azerbaijan. And a Mossad agent, I was reading some of the leaked documents on WikiLeaks about Azerbaijan. One of the Mossad agents say that they feel home in Baku. There are no restrictions for the Mossad operatives in Baku. So this is how far the relationship between Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Israel goes. So this is even beyond hypocritical, because we are here speaking about complicity of Azerbaijan and Turkey in the genocide in Palestine, in the carpet bombing of Lebanon, and now with this the unleash of the al-Nusra terrorists basically in Syria.
Israel also supplies the drones that enable Azerbaijan to to wage war against Armenia in the past few years, and they have very close cooperation of ties, both military and intelligence. It's but what about
I just want to mention one thing, Carl, here, Habibi, just one thing about Azerbaijan. These drones which participated in the ethnic cleansing of the Armenians from Karabakh. There is an article in Haaretz, the title, I'm paraphrasing now, Israeli fingerprints are all over the ethnic cleansing of the Armenians in Karabakh. And the Israelis had an invested interest in ethnically cleansing the Armenians from Karabakh as well, because Karabakh has a big border with Iran. And now, with the presence of the Azeri authorities there, Israel also has further access into Iran. So the position of Iran during the conflict on Karabakh was very weird, that they kept saying that they support the Azerbaijani takeover of Karabakh, something that they say, we're for international law and rules-based international order. That's ridiculous, because nobody respects the rules-based international order. It is made for the what the collective West sees the peasants in the jungle, It's made to persecute them. It's not made to create justice in the world. They use it in their imperialistic ambitions. And Iran back then was like, but we have to respect international law. Yeah, international law also says now that Israel occupies half of Palestine. Then why are you struggling against the Israelis if it's about international law? Then recognize Israel if it's about international law, right? But they didn't do that. They gave political cover for Azerbaijan to conquer the Armenian territories, which was an independent enclave. And now the Israelis have established smart villages on the borders between Karabakh and Iran. And nobody knows what is the purpose of these smart villages. The Israeli Minister of Labor, I believe, he goes and he participates in the ceremony of opening of these smart villages. And just on my Google map, I was trying to see the location. And then I compared it or tried to measure where the downfall of Rouhani's helicopter was. It was 200 kilometers away from this smart village on the borders between Azerbaijan and Iran, which makes you wonder if these smart villages also probably have some jamming technology or any technological hardware which can definitely take down helicopters by disturbing its tech, or like they did with the Pagers terrorist attack. I mean, after the Pagers terrorist attack, if the mindset in Israel is it can go this far in committing a heinous act in this way, in like only the planning and the execution of it, it's mind-boggling. So I don't rule out that they are using also now the Azeri recently conquered territories in Karabakh in order to wage operations, intelligence operations inside Iran as well.
Yeah. Let's come back to Syria for a second. We know traditionally the so-called Syrian rebels are supported by NATO. That includes Turkey, but also Qatar, because Qatar is a big source of funding for all these jihadist groups. Do you think Qatar continue to play a big role in the current push to take over Aleppo?
So the former foreign minister of Qatar, Hamad bin Jassim, had an interview. I believe this was in 2017, and then another one in 2021. And he said that Qatar supported Jabhat al-Nusra or al-Nusra Front. And what they call now HTS is the rebrand for al-Nusra Front. I think that the Turkish support to these militants in Idlib is direct in terms of the weapons, the gear, the intelligence, the drones, the training, like everything. It's basically a Turkish army, but with multinational, what they call jihadists, right? It's like a contract army because they are paid well. So they have the ideological incentive and also they have a financial incentive. Now, when you compare it with the Syrian army is a state army that people go to serve their army. Serving is different than fighting in a mercenary army. When you are fighting for your country, you're not going to get paid to fight. You have a duty, you fight, you finish, you go home. So I think that's a big difference that we have to also shed light on. Now, there is the Qatari, in my opinion, how do we know that Qatar supports this al-Nusra terrorists now? We know it because almost all the Arabic countries in the region expressed support for Syria in its fight against terrorism. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Egypt, even Jordan. And Arab League supported Syria's war against terrorism, in exception for Qatar. Everyone accepts that this is a fight against terrorism except Qatar. And if you follow the coverage of Al Jazeera, it's basically criminal what Al Jazeera does in Syria. Al Jazeera is it's more than embedded with Al Nusra. They are with Al Nusra. It's like Al Nusra gives them exclusive access for Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera reporters and journalists are waging psychological operations in Syria against the Syrian army, and they're spreading lots of panic and false information about places fallen in the hands of a Nusra, or Nusra captured some military unit and started decapitating people. So they're spreading fear even among the Syrian army in order to demoralize them and force them to retreat. And in some cases, they were successful, like Aleppo. In Aleppo, what happened, it's illogical in a military sense. But when the attack happened, it was multifolded. It was a military attack. It was a psychological attack. It was a media attack. And there was also technological attack. Technology was mostly jamming the communication of the Syrian army, which I believe is not done by al-Nusra militants, probably Turkish intelligence, and also drone attacks. Now, the drone attacks, we're not talking about some elementary amateur drones. These drones were high-tech drones with clear GPS locations and data. So they targeted several senior military officers and they killed them in targeted attacks. This makes me believe that they already had clear data and information, just like they um, penetrated or infiltrated Hezbollah communication. Probably they did similar thing with Syria. So they started hunting down the senior officers. And once your senior officer, your superior is dead, this will also spread panic among the soldiers. So logically, if you see it, if it was just an attack, a military attack, they didn't have a chance, these militants. But it was multifolded. It had different layers. And this led into when the first defense line crumbled, it was Al Jazeera and other Qatari outlets, they were present, and they already started reporting about the fall of Aleppo, where the militants were not even close to the city of Aleppo. They spread huge panic inside the city that the head choppers came and they're going to do this and that. And in the minds of the people, when they hear Nusra, they remember the footage and they remember what they saw when Nusra occupied the city for 4 years, and how they used to brutalize the civilians, basically, and it was a gang, right? So the people were also demoralized. Like if the military sees no popular backing, because the people are also afraid, things get quickly into the abyss. And this is what happened in Aleppo. So the Syrian army had to make a strategic retreat, which had certain failures in it and certain setbacks, and they have left many, unfortunately, heavy equipment in Aleppo. But the decision was made on a higher level that we have to retreat quickly, 180 kilometers, and establish a defensive line in Hama. And as I mentioned, Hama was the most important place, and that's why they're trying to conquer Hama. But the Syrian army decided that this is the red line and it can't fall. Unfortunately, they in the past few days, Hama was very close to fall. And yesterday, Al Jazeera again was present in northern Hama suburbs, and they were reporting live that the militants infiltrated the city and they're capturing neighborhoods, and all false, all fake, nothing true. So Al Jazeera is complicit in this. But thankfully, the Syrian army withstood, and they received big reinforcement from Damascus, which is good news and bad news. Good news because they are able now to clearly repel these attacks and push them back from Hama and plan for a counter offensive, because counter offensive needs planning, it will need time, it will need competent units to arrive and continue this operation. But it's also bad news because you're overstretching your units now in different places in the country, whereas the Israelis may wage an incursion inside Syria from the south. And the Israelis have sent reinforcement to the borders in the Golan Heights, and they have been installing some technological equipments on the borders, trying to scan the area and take pictures. And they have now a big tank units on the border. So what are they planning for? God knows. It is possible that they would wage a war on Syria if the militants do not succeed in Hama. But this also means that Syria's elite forces are also in Hama. Syria is not like, I received so many comments. People are like, oh, what kind of army is this? You know, how this, and like this armchair warriors sitting thousands of kilometers away do not understand that 15 years of war, it's exhausting. Nobody can fight 15 years from his lifetime in the same pace, and people are really tired, and they thought that finally it was over, we reconstruct, and the rest is like for political process, you know, and all of a sudden everything returned to the point of 2013. So now the elite forces that these people were saying, oh, where is the Syrian army elite forces, don't they have? Yeah, they're all present now in Hama. So now what happens if Israel wages a war against Syria? Are these armchair warriors going to defend the Golan Heights? I mean, they're also, Syria is sandwiched between the terrorists, between Israel, and we are speaking about a NATO country. Like Turkey is fully in the back of these militants. So this also requires the participation of the allied forces of Syria. If they're going to bring multinational terrorists from all around the world and create a contract army from Al-Qaeda terrorists and wage such war against the people, basically, of the country, then Syria has all the right to ask for the assistance of its allies, including Russia, Iran, Iraq. And if the Arabic countries want to participate, that's even better because, for example, Egypt has a big military. And the presence of the Egyptian forces, I mean, I rule out completely that possibility, but there is also this sensitivity in Syria that, oh, those are Shia militias coming to fight against the Sunnis. But what they don't tell you, that those Sunni militias are Al-Qaeda forces. like this, if Shia soldiers come from Iraq or Iran or Lebanon to fight, they're not fighting against ordinary Sunni people. They're fighting against hardcore Salafi, Takfiri terrorists. But in the media, Al Jazeera always recycles this sectarian talk, and in order to urge more people to hate the government in Syria and participate in this fight against them, including in the public opinion in the Arab world. Now you see many people are like fool again, falling for the same trap over and over again and saying, oh, HDS is liberating Syria from the Assad dictatorship. So make it make sense, brother.
I can't believe people still fall for that in 2024. I mean, I understand in 2012, maybe when Syrian war first started, people don't have like direct source of information, when much of the mainstream media was polluted by this active disinfo by the like of Al Jazeera, by CNN. This is 2024, man. I mean, Syrian war has been it's been over 10 years. And I thought it would be obvious to everyone now who are these actors pulling the strings. I mean, ask the question, cui bono, for whose benefit? Why is this frozen conflict getting reactivated at this critical juncture when Israel is in Lebanon, is invading Lebanon, and when United States, you talk about people were hoping for reconstruction, but U.S. sanction was specifically designed so the reconstruction of Syria cannot happen. It's designed to keep Syria poor, demoralized, impoverished, so that it can easily fall prey to something like this that just happened. And you have mentioned Syria's allies like Iraqi and the Iranian militias coming over to help. I just saw reports of U.S. military A-10 were strafing these relief columns of Iraqi militias coming across the border. And at the same time, the U.S. supported so-called SDF forces in northern Syria now attacking Syrian government allies in the Azor. This is it's pretty obvious, despite all the denial from State Department about like, oh, they have no knowledge of this. They are actively supporting the head choppers. They're fully on the side of the head chopper, just like they were 10 years ago when Jake Sullivan now is Biden's national security advisor. But back in 2012, WikiLeaks has leaked his email to Hillary Clinton in 2012 when Jake Sullivan clearly said Al Qaeda is on our side in Syria. I mean,
maybe we're having a technical problem with Carl, guys. Don't worry, he will come back. No, I'm your host on Syrian Analysis. I'm the one who is managing this live streaming. Don't worry. We will wait just for a second for him to join. Maybe he has technical support. Let me check if I can see myself when I'm speaking live on Syrian Analysis. Not Syrian Analysis, sorry. Yeah, I can. So I will just show you a tweet that I was trying to show you. Anyways, he has to bring it on the screen now. I mean, he's correct about Jake Sullivan's emails. Jake Sullivan basically sent an email to Hillary Clinton. He is the current national security advisor to the Biden administration, and back then he sent an email to Hillary Clinton when he used to work for Hillary Clinton, and he said Al Qaeda is on our side in Syria, and Al Qaeda offshoot Al Nusra is the main group attacking today on Aleppo and the rest of the Syrian territories. Also in 2021, 2019 or 2021, an American journalist met with Jolani, the head of the Nusra terrorists in Idlib. And they were trying to rebrand him into some cute, animal-loving and LGBTQ plus sympathizer of a rebel. And they even asked him to wear a suit in front instead of wearing his jihadi outfit. And basically, these journalists did an interview with him to polish and rebrand this Nusra guy. And in this article, which they published on PBS, you can check it. You can check PBS Jolani interview. And if you go scroll down a little bit, Carl is back. I already took over your podcast, so don't worry about
it. Go for it, Kevork. My audience is here to listen to you.
I already told them about this email, and then I continued saying that in I think this was 2019 or 2021, the PBS met with Jolani in Idlib, and they were trying to rebrand him into some cute animal-loving LGBTQ plus approving rebel. So they asked him to wear a suit and look cute and to trim his beard a little bit and change his clothing. And so they whitewashed his name. And then in the article, which they published on PBS, if you scroll down a little bit, the former special envoy of the U.S. to Syria, James Jeffrey, who served under Democrat and Republican, he says Jolani was an asset for the U.S. strategy in Syria. And this is the same group which is attacking now on Aleppo. That is why the American administration hypocritically say, oh, we had no idea, we don't support HTS. But at the same time, they say Assad doesn't have a legitimacy. Look, they don't say HTS doesn't have a legitimacy, but they say Assad doesn't have a legitimacy. So you can understand it as a political cover. Carl, I just screened something. If you can take it on the screen, this is a tweet made by Brian. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. Yeah, this is something that was written, and many people cannot make the link between Syria and the region. Brian basically says the propaganda machine, in cooperation with its regional allies, including Al Jazeera and local Arabic language propaganda, are investing heavily in comparing Israel and the Syrian government while comparing Gaza and Idlib. Israel and Idlib are two fronts of US aggression in the region. Both seek identical ends as Washington. Despite posing as enemies of each other, no real adversity exists, and in fact, Israel has directly supported US-backed terrorists pouring out of Idlib, Syria, because most people do not analyze, but instead follow their emotions and appealing propaganda. This works amazingly well. Those who genuinely support Palestinians at the same time eagerly promote US proxies in Syria, undermining rather than aiding real resistance to Israel brutality against Palestinians. Israel regularly bombs Syrian forces. Israel never bombed Idlib. If you don't get this, you don't get it at all. I think this can't be explained. Like I feel sorry, and I feel like I feel really bothered from inside that we have to explain the obvious. People have to learn how to connect the dots, and this has become really tiring to see people fall for it over and over again, especially when it comes to Syria. And there are certain patterns that you can see and you can read through. It's only a matter of logic now. So if you don't see it, I think this person lacks the skill of connecting the dots. Therefore, the logical thinking is gone. Basically, he's taking decisions emotionally. Or there is also another possibility that this person is pro-Israel, for example, but hiding behind these the titles that he is for the people, for the democratic change in the region, this and that. And the last factor I would believe, especially this is among the Muslims, especially the Muslims outside of Syria. It's like those who, like the types of Muhammad hijabs and all this piece of in London, in Birmingham, in places who wholeheartedly support ISIS, but they're too shy to say that publicly. and these people are controlled opposition. And I want to remind people that the types of Muhammad hijab, they were given platform on Piers Morgan and other shows because they are controlled opposition. And because what they say, basically, although it might sound on the surface pro-Palestine, but they harm the Palestinian cause because they use the Palestine cause as a cover to destroy the allies of Palestine. So logically, if anyone is watching and still have doubts, who gives the tangible support to the Lebanese and Palestinian factions to continue the fight? It's Iran, it's Iraq, it's Syria, it's Lebanon, and it's Yemen. And every single one of these actors is demonized by the types of Muhammad hijab and the types of Al Jazeera, because those are the psyops. If people cannot see that this psyop, I'm very sorry, because what they do, basically, they fool you by supporting the Palestine case, and they gain a name, a brand, popularity, credibility. People like Piers Morgan host them, so millions and tens of millions of people now know this person. And then these people try to destroy the allies of Palestine, those who are giving tangible support. So what happens if Syria is gone, and Hezbollah is gone, and Yemen is gone, and Iran is gone? The Palestinians will find themselves in a situation that they're alone, and they can't continue to struggle. And they will say, then we have to accept what the Israelis want. They can't create a TV channel like Al Jazeera and say, let's be anti-Palestinian. Everybody will hate Al Jazeera. Nobody will watch Al Jazeera. But if you are pro-Palestine, almost everyone supports you in the region, and then you direct this public opinion against the enemies of Israel who are giving the tangible support to the Palestinians. So this is how they operate. It's a multi-layered plot, and if people think conspiracies do not exist in politics, then I think these people should not follow politics.
I mean, they're Mohammed hijab, he's like already branded as an extremist figure, but you have people who are posing as moderate, reasonable critics of U.S. imperialism. I'm talking about Mehdi Hassan. They do the same thing. These guys are total control opposition, opportunists, and they are, all what they really designed to do ultimately is to, while they seem to be against U.S. imperialism, yet they peddle all the State Department propaganda against the U.S. enemies, whether it's Syria, Iran, China, they're on it. And I want to go back to ask you, what is Qatar's angle in this? I mean, like, I remember when Syrian War started, Qatar, they wanted the gas pipeline going through Syria, but that it's 10 years later. Why is Qatar still so dead set on supporting these jihadists to overthrow Syrian government?
They're still hopeful that they are capable of removing Assad from power. Look, it's a matter also of mentality. The people in the Levant have a different mentality than the people in the Gulf countries. The people who come more from a deserty countries, they have a different set of values and different way of seeing the world. And this is not to downgrade them or downgrade the Levantine. This is just difference of culture. I think revenge is very powerful value in the Qatari ruling elite now. They had a golden opportunity after what is called the Arab Spring to become the absolute regional power with Turkey. And they propped up the Muslim Brotherhood groups in Tunisia and brought them to power, and then in Egypt, in Libya, and they were hit in the Syrian War. Like, Syria was the main battlefield. If Syria falls, Iran no longer has any presence in the Levant. It's gone. So if Syria is gone, Hezbollah is also gone. So Qataris were propping up all these jihadi groups in Syria for to replace the Iranian influence in the region, and this is the American goal at the end. And now Qatar is labeled as a major non-NATO ally by the US. So what they're basically doing is they're pursuing the NATO goals in the region through different means. And the absolute goal of NATO in the region is to degrade the Iranian influence. And Syria doesn't mind degrading the Iranian influence from the country, basically. Syria has never been a place for a great Iranian influence. Syria always diversified its relationship between East and West, Arabs and Iranians, but the existential threat against Syria itself, it was Syria had no choice but to rely on the allies, including Iran and Russia. And during the tough times, nobody came to Syria to carry out a fight, but these allies. So it's not like Syria has the option and Egyptians are telling them, oh, look, we have 100 million people in Egypt and we can send you some soldiers, but Syrians are saying, no, don't send, we just want it from Iran, No. Nobody wants to come and fight with Syria, although the national security of Syria is from the national security of Egypt. If Syria falls, these jihadi types, they will spawn with the blinking of an eye in Egypt again. And they will try to conquer the country again, like they did in 2012 through the Muslim Brotherhood. So Qatar has its own interest, but it is tasked. Qatar is not like some sort of an independent player in the region who has just decided to become a regional powerhouse. It's a small, tiny island which has Al Jazeera and it has Al Adid Air Base. Other than that, there is nothing. It's like a 2 hypersonic missile size of a tiny island. But because the Americans give them this strength, they have lots of fuel, lots of gas, which they want to bring it to Europe to end any possible, even in 100 years, a Russian rapprochement with Europe again, and completely finish the Nord Stream projects once and for all, because they can destroy it, but probably in 50 years, circumstances change. The Americans probably become weaker, and the Europeans find themselves in a position that they want to reconcile with the Russians and buy cheap gas again. So they're thinking strategically 100 years ahead. They're not like us commenting on certain issues happening now. These people are strategists, and they want for Europe to have an option. And as long as Assad is in power, the Europeans will dream to have a Qatari gas. So that's why also Turkey is very determined for the same reason, because Turkey will become the distributor of the Qatari gas. It is going to be a huge profit for Turkey, for Qatar, geopolitically, and also financially. I think those are the reasons why the Qataris are still very much engaged in the Syrian conflict.
Okay, so I mean, they chose this opportune moment when Hezbollah is facing a tough fight against Israel. Hezbollah has been traditionally very important backer of Syrian government during the Syrian War, and Russia is preoccupied with Ukraine, and because Russia played a decisive factor when they came in 2015, and to turn the tide of the war. So now they decide to choose this exact moment to deal this blow to Syrian government. What do you see as uh, how do you see this will play out? I mean, I'm asking you to look into the crystal ball here a little bit, but how do you think this will play out in the immediate future? Because I saw Russia made a very strong statement against Turkey. Putin said this is a violation of the Sochi agreement that made the Syrian war a frozen conflict. And Russia still have a lot of influence. Russia still have a military port in Syria. I don't think Russia is ready to give that up. You know, Russia's military presence in Syria dates from 1971 when there's still Soviet Union, and Russian Air Force is already active in Aleppo. But how do you see this will play out?
Carl, I'm sure you are way more democratic than any other person. So I will make some harsh criticisms now to the allies. So it's like and I do it because they're allies, and it's not. I don't make it with bad intentions. The Russians have been fooled in Minsk Agreement 1. They've been fooled after the Minsk Agreement 2. And they created similar agreements with Turkey in Syria. Freeze the conflict and give them time. They were losing the war. The Syrian army was advancing faster than any militant can withstand. And the Turks came to save their militants from Syria, and they went to Moscow and they agreed with them to freeze the conflict, to give an opportunity for them to regroup and retrain and resupply and give them the weapons they need to wage this war now against the Syrian army. This was a fatal mistake. Like, I understand that the Russians have calculations and they wanted to appease Erdogan because they don't want to lose him, this and that. But they have to understand that the rules are made only for the NATO countries and the transatlantic countries to abuse the rest of the world. The rules are not made to bring our countries any good. So you're playing a rigged game with a party or a group of players who do not respect international law, rules-based order, or these agreements that you reach with them about Syria or in anywhere around the world. So in this case, the Russians have been betrayed several times by Russia has been betrayed several times by Turkey, but they are determined to keep Erdogan in power. To extent that I have reliable information, and this is information, not an analysis from Damascus, that during the elections in Turkey last time, Moscow and Tehran, they were brutally pressing Assad to meet with Erdogan. Like, and I don't want to go into more details, but they have taken bold steps against Damascus because Assad refused to meet with Erdogan. And this is the consequence now. What's happening in Aleppo? Erdogan betrayed Putin again. Okay, this is from the Russian side. From the Iranian side, if Iran doesn't see the conflict in the region as a war against the axis of resistance, then it should not lead the axis of resistance, because their political and military actions in the region, they were not on the same level or even anywhere close to the American engagement with Israel. The United States has given unconditional support to Israel to wage a genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. So this should have been already the red line. Genocide in Gaza was a red line. It's not only bombing Lebanon or assassinating Haniyeh or Nasrallah or no, the genocide was the red line. This was the first front line of the axis of resistance against Israel. And destroying Gaza in this way and watching the entire world is watching, including the allies of Gaza, basically the Palestinians, for it to be decimated, you gave Israel the signal that you are not going to act even in the case of a genocide. And when the attacks happened against Iran and assassinations, Iran retaliated, and the retaliation was harsh. The Operation Promise 2 was harsh, but it didn't reach the deterrence that they were aiming for. The assassinations that happened in Lebanon, the entire leadership of Hezbollah, those were major blows against Hezbollah. So they came after Gaza and they came after Lebanon. They assassinated the entire military leadership of Hezbollah, and Iran didn't increase its engagement in this. They said there's going to be the Operation Promise 3, but we have an administration now in Iran, and they're like, as if a coup happened in Iran after the death of Rouhani, and this new team, Pezeshkian and the former foreign minister, what was his name, of Iran, they are still seeking for a deal with the West. And I think this approach has alarmed Damascus. And not the last meeting of Assad with the foreign minister of Iran, but the previous one. This was a few weeks ago, before the ceasefire in Lebanon. The information coming from Damascus was upset, because if Iran doesn't want to participate in a war which is against the axis of resistance or increase its participation, then let's reach to a ceasefire agreement. It's better than going into singular wars against Israel, because if they go to war in Gaza, destroy it, and they go against Lebanon and destroy it, and then they will come after Syria, and then they will come after Yemen, they will come after Iraq, they will come after Iran. But if they come against you one by one, it's going to be easier job for them. Now, we are at a situation that Iran says, well, we're going to retaliate. They didn't do it. Okay. Now the Israeli and Turkish forces are expanding in Syria again. And because of this inaction from Iran, or let's call it one of the factors, now they have no choice but to send, I don't want to underestimate it, thousands are not enough. Thousands of soldiers are not enough. If they're going to restabilize Syria again and capture the territories lost, they will need tens of thousands of soldiers, because the militants the Syrian army is fighting today are not the same that they fought in 2014 and 15. These are professional, trained NATO contract army, trained by a NATO country, gear is from NATO country, and they are like a professional mercenary force. And they're using technology, drones, JAM, and they have also intelligence support from Ukraine. So it's a mini world war happening already on Syria. And if Iranians think sending few hundred of, let's say, soldiers from Iraq or Iran or Lebanon is enough, it's not enough. If they want to keep their posture in the region, they have to increase their participation. Anything less than that, Syria will find itself in a position that the Arabs will come and tell, look, we can save you. Trump is coming. We, the Saudis and the Emiratis, we have brilliant relationship with Trump, and we can convince him to press on Erdogan to withdraw and lift the sanctions, but you have to abandon Iran. So it's not like I'm not making any threats. I'm no one. I'm just saying how could the situation could end for Iran, right? And for Syria's basically survival. So I'm sure the Iranians understand this. I'm not preaching them, but the inaction is it's I can't understand it, because they're doing something that goes against their own interests. So in this case, that's why I wanted to direct this criticism to Russia and to Iran, because they are playing with rigged rules that are meant to serve the transatlantic players and to subjugate our people. And see what they did with the ICC. ICC was meant for the leaders in the Middle East and all these peasant jungle people, you know. It's not meant for Israeli leaders. Now they're issuing a statement against Israeli leaders. The court is anti-Semitic, Habibi, all of a sudden, you know. Like, if they don't respect international law, and they want to occupy, and they want to strangle, and they can do all these things without any repercussions, then why? Like, I'm for international law, if it's applied on all equally, it would be perfect. But this international law doesn't exist. Now, just one last point about China. China doesn't have an active participation in the Syrian war. They're politically giving cover, vetoes. Those are amazing. But when Syria liberated Damascus, and there were opportunities for investment, and the Chinese investors came, and they refused to invest in Syria because China is very wary of investing in a situation which is not stable enough. They want the country completely stabilized, but if they come to Syria and invest in Syria, they could immunize Syria against such attacks, because investment in Syria improves the economy. And once the economy is improved, this improves the army. And once the army is again powerful, they can stabilize the entire country. It's not the other way around. If the allies do not support Syria, Syria alone cannot withstand NATO countries. It's a small country. And it's a miracle that after 15 years, Syria still exists after all this war. So the allies have to invest in Syria. And what are they afraid of? American sanctions? It's like, who cares nowadays about American sanctions? Like, the Russians went into full war in Ukraine, and 1,400 sanctions imposed on them now. Like, this was a window of opportunity for them to deal among each other and increase the trade among the allied countries, and also finding solutions for the unipolar world. So unless you're in a position that you're forced to find an alternative, then the unipolar world will continue. If you want to go to multipolarity, sometimes it has to be the hard way. It can't be the easy way. The easy way is for waiting for the United States empire to die. It's like it could last another 50 years. And in 50 years, I don't think there would be Syrian people left in Syria. I'm talking to my friends and beloved ones in Aleppo. If they open humanitarian corridors now, Carl, you see all these TV channels and outlets say that Aleppo has been liberated. You will not find anyone in Aleppo. Like, I can assure you, like 90% of Aleppo people will leave the city right away if they open the humanitarian corridors. But all these propaganda machines that they have, they go to Aleppo. Like, imagine you are in Aleppo and these Nusra journalists coming to you and saying, "So, Carl, tell us, Habibi, what do you think about our liberation in Aleppo?" Like, what do you expect them to say to the camera when you are like just next to you some stinky bearded person from Tajikistan or Uzbekistan is there, and you don't even speak his language, and he's like looking at you what you're going to say, like what do you think is going to happen if this person says, "No, I don't like al-Nusra, please bring back the Assad regime"? He's going to end up in a public square and executed. So most people want to leave, and people are asking me to write on social media for humanitarian corridors, and I'm asking people in Syria. It's almost impossible now because all the agreements with Turkey have collapsed, and Russia has no ground to deal with Turkey now. They have to establish new formulas, and this will take time. After that, if they open humanitarian corridors, you will watch it with your own eyes, the influx of hundreds of thousands of people from Aleppo to other places, because nobody wants to live under Nusra rule. This is a tiny Islamic caliphate, and the people in Aleppo mostly are Muslims. However, they reject this notion because Aleppo people are very diverse in different school of thoughts. Many people like songs and dancing and going to restaurants. Many people drink alcohol. It's not like if you're a Muslim, you don't you're just praying all day and every day and you don't enjoy your life. No, that's not how Muslim world works. And many Muslims are singers. Many Muslims they play instruments. Many Muslims are football players. They participate in cultural events. And these people will be under the feet of al-Nusra because music is not allowed. Sport is not allowed. Wearing shorts is not allowed. Alcohol is not allowed. And funny enough, they're destroying the alcohol shops in Aleppo. I mean, they all come from Turkey. They pass through Turkey, but they don't destroy the alcohol shops in Turkey. Isn't that ironic? Why don't they destroy the alcohol shops in Turkey? Why is it only in Aleppo? Is this only the Islamic State only exists in Syria? It doesn't exist in Turkey? What the fuck is that?
That's funny because that reminded me of a NHK, which is a Japanese TV station. They went to interview these Uyghur refugees in Turkey, and what they said was they when they came to Turkey, when they left China, came to Turkey, they thought they would be coming to like the paradise where they get to practice is their version of Islam. But they were shocked. They were shocked. People, like women, were wearing mini skirts, and there are many women uncovered. They were shocked. They were shocked. So of course, a lot of them get intercepted by jihadist recruiters at the airport in Istanbul, and they get railroaded directly to Idlib to fight for Nusra, like what they're doing right now, and. So
they are part of the invasion of Aleppo. The Uyghurs, they are very formidable force, and Erdogan basically brought them to first to Hatay, what is called Skanderban in Syria. It's Hatay, and he promised them that he will settle them in Hatay. But once they arrived, he pushed them to Idlib because the borders were open for the jihadists. And around 20,000 Uyghurs arrived to Syria. This was in 2013, 2014. So imagine. After multiplying how many Uyghurs we have now in Idlib, and once you turn 7, you go to the military camp and you train. So 7-year-old joins the Islamic Turkestan army in Syria, and there is a documentary even on Vice. Imagine Vice, which is the mainstream media. They have been to Syria and they talk with these Uyghurs. It's horrendous. They have taken over all the towns and the homes of the Christians, and they put signal like a stamp N in Arabic. N means Nusayri. Nusayri means like Christian. So those were the homes of the Christians. They put like a stamp on it, so it's accessible. You can go and take it, like it's like free. Like the Zionists do, like come from all around the world to Palestine, and they take over Palestinian land. So what is the difference between this settlement and that settlement, basically, right?
Man, this is kind of a heavy topic because I remember back in 2015, 2016, Syrian Arab Army and its allies, the Russian Air Force and the Iranian militias and Hezbollah, they took a long time and a lot of casualties to expel those jihadist elements from Aleppo back then. It didn't happen overnight. It was a very hard fought battle, and it's really shocking to see how quickly Aleppo fell to those same jihadist groups this time around. And I can't even imagine what kind of effort would be required to push them out again.
Yes, it will take a long time. We're here to tell the people the truth. And the truth is, the Syrian army is 200 kilometers away from Aleppo. The main force is in Hama. They have some presence around Aleppo, but those are not for offensive. They're just for defensive purposes. And in order to wage a counteroffensive, you need to prepare your units. You have to bring the soldiers. You have to plan. And with the allies, this will take months for planning. So months of planning, and then months, probably years of military operations. We are in 2013 now again. So probably another 5 to 6 years of war or 10 years of war. Nobody knows. But yesterday I was talking to my cousin, and I told him, bro, I started to believe into this messianic conspiracies that there has to be like an Armageddon and Damascus has to be destroyed and the second coming of Messiah. Like you feel like some people are pushing for that scenario in the region, and we're just having laughter together, But it's like, if you see it, it's like they don't let you win, like
Kevork, I have to tell you, there's a significant number of people in United States are called Christian Zionists.
I
That's
know,
what they
yeah.
actually believe.
Yeah,
They
yeah, I
they
know.
they wanted to bring the coming second coming of Messiah. But first you get all the Jews together in Palestine, and then the Armageddon is going to come. All the Jews will either be destroyed or be
But
converted to Christianity.
one of the requirements of this Armageddon is for Damascus to be destroyed. So what are they pushing for? Are they pushing for these militants to go to Damascus? I mean, now we are just talking conspiracies, right? Like sometimes before I sleep, I'm solving all the geopolitical issues in my brain before I sleep, and then the conspiracies pop into my mind. I'm like, what are they trying to do? Like sending these head choppers to Damascus to conquer it, and these head choppers are too chaotic to control later, so they will pose threats to everyone basically in the region. And now that would be the perfect opportunity for the US and Israel to come in Syria, occupy it under the excuse of fighting terrorism. Remember, these groups attacking Aleppo are labeled by the United States as a terrorist group. So on the longer run, if I'm saying for an argument's sake, God forbid, they control Syria and they start exporting their shithole around in the region, then everybody will consider them a threat. And they will say, these terrorist groups occupy Syria. We have to go and free the Syrians from these terrorists. And if that happens, if the Americans come as liberators, and
Well,
if you are...
Kevork. That's how Americans ended up in 1/3 of Syria in the first place. They're still there. They went there to fight ISIS back in 2014, 2015. The Americans hasn't left, and thank Trump. One thing I appreciate about Trump is he tell it as it is.
Man.
He just said you remember that speech Trump said, well,
we have the oil.
I pulled the soldier out, but I just left enough for the oil because I love the oil. We gotta have the oil. We gotta have the Syrian oil. I mean, like this is why the establishment people hate Trump, because he is like the emperor have no clothes moment. He just like rips the clothes, like the facade off, and show the American empire as it really is. And you can't argue with that because what he says is true. And that's how America. I was watching, observing Syrian War when it unfolded. I was wondering, like, why is American? First, I'm like, why is American pushing all the Kurdish forces to drive toward the Azor? Because there's very little Kurdish population in that area. Why are they going to the Azor? And then I realized, of course, all the oil and gas deposit is in that region. So now America is, through its proxy forces, they occupy 1/3 of the Syria that's abundant in oil and gas and food, and also the food basket of Syria. This is and there's. Go ahead. Sorry.
If you give enough support to these terrorists in Syria, and I'm just talking about the hypothetical thing, and they occupy, let's say, entire Syria now, exception for the places where the Americans already occupy. And naturally, these terrorists are very antagonistic to the minorities, especially to the Christians, right? And this will be when there is enough footage coming from Syria for decapitations and slaughtering Christians and minorities in Syria, and these terrorists started posing threat to the region, basically, the Americans will copy the same strategy in the rest of Syria, and they will come and occupy it under the guise of fighting terrorism, protecting minorities. And when you have enough minority people or Christian people suffering under the Nusra rule, then they will probably see the Americans as liberators from Nusra Front as well. Because remember, Christians in Syria, the Christian churches in Syria, Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant, they are all anti-Zionist. And they have been trying to explain this to the Western churches for a long time, but nobody listens to them. But if there is enough persecution and bloodshed against the Christian communities in Syria, and the churches come under, let's say, serious threat, for the sake of survival, I'm just saying, they would put them in a position to pick and choose between Nusra and the US and Israel, right? So this is how you create even an ally by posing probably someone who considers you an ally later, by posing a serious threat against them. This is a serious thing that we have to consider, because also the Christian churches in Syria are just like in Russia. They're not tolerant, basically, and that's not a bad thing. Like churches and mosques are not meant to be tolerant. People confuse between religion and neoliberal ideologies. Like, if the church goes against the teachings of Jesus Christ, it's no longer a church. It becomes an ideological platform for the politicians. And this happens in Germany, it happens in France, it happens in the UK, that the churches start changing the teachings of Jesus Christ. I'm personally, anyone who belongs or is part of the LGBT community, I am in full support of their personal rights, individual rights. Live however you want. Don't impose your thoughts on anyone. But don't tell me that Christianity is tolerant towards the LGBT, or Islam is tolerant to LGBT. It is not. It's like, you have to change it, okay, but don't tell me that Jesus or Muhammad said that. There is an entire chapter in the Quran about the gay people. It's not there is no tolerance for it, and I reject that. I don't want to harm any human for any orientation. In the contrary, don't we have gay people in Syria, lesbian people in Syria? Like, we of course know them because they're our friends, but nobody touches them. But coming out and making LGBT, for example, as an identity, it's a completely different thing. Like, if you identify yourself as a part of the LGBT community, that's a completely different thing. It becomes politicized. And this is, I think, also a global trend, that they're trying to erase religions, for example, completely from the subconscious of the people. And this could be also preface for the post-human era, that they're preparing people all the time and telling us about the brain chips and how we are going to become superhumans and this and that. Like, there is a spiritual part of it, you know?
Well, I think it's just they want to make from U.S. perspective. I'm U.S. centric because I lived there for 30 years. They just want everyone to be Americans. They just want to make the whole globe all Americans. That's their goal. I mean, I remember a famous line from the American movie Full Metal Jacket. There was a American sergeant. He's talking about the Vietnamese. He's like, inside every Gook's bodies, there's American dying to get out. I mean, that's people laugh about it, that line, but that mentality, I mean, it's very much present even today. They believe when they say universal value, what they're really promoting is American. What everyone must conform to how we are. I think that the difference between the Middle East and America, US and also Western Europe is that in US and Europe, a lot of people say they're Christians or whatever, but in the Middle East they really believe, whereas in US in Europe, it's just a label. It's like everybody pays lip service, Yeah, I mean, U.S. is supposed to be like the most Christian nation or whatever. I live in U.S. Man. That's bullshit.
It's a very it's an anti-image. This is something that I was thinking about. I think that there is a misconception about the West in general, that it's a Christian world. I mean, there are Christian people, but the systems are not Christian, and they also do specifically anti-Christian policies, especially in the birthplace of Christianity, basically in the Middle East. So when you do regime change in Iraq, and there were 1.5 million Christians, and now you have 150,000 Christians, so you decrease it by 90%. and then you try to do the same thing in Syria, then while confessing that what you did in Iraq was wrong, then this gives me the impression that those are not some mistakes, but deliberate policies for the same outcomes that they have reached in Iraq. And they did in Syria. Probably 80% of the Christians fled the country during the war. So you cannot come and tell me that repeating the same mistake is and expecting different results is just a genius policy. It could be deliberate from their side, to empty the region from its Christian people, and because Syria is a multicultural country, Lebanon is a multicultural country, Iraq was a multicultural country, and when you have multicultural countries and there is a harmony and coexistence between them, this gives a bad impression about Israel, that Israel wants to become a country only for Jewish people, right? But if your neighboring countries are Islamic states, then why can't you become a Jewish state if your neighbors are exclusively Islamic states? So I think that Israel also has an interest in emptying the Christians from Syria. And this is not a conspiracy theory now. When the war started in Syria, there were NGOs in Lebanon telling the Christians in Syria that they can come to Lebanon and stay there for 3 months, and in 3 months they go to Canada or to Australia. And this happened with many of my relatives and friends. They ended up in Canada in a matter of 3 months. You go to Lebanon, you apply for it, and there is something called resettlement policy that Trudeau opened only for the Christians of Syria. So imagine how many Christians migrated to Canada, not as a refugee, but rather resettlement, which means you go with full rights and you just start working, and it's like a hypersonic mission, they take you from here, they put you there, you start a new life. It's not like you're a refugee, and if your country gets better, you have to return, or you have some conditions for you to get a resident permit. No. You just arrive in Lebanon, you apply for it, and you go to Canada in 3 months. That's how quick it was.
Wow. I did not even realize that.
It's a soft ethnic cleansing,
Yeah.
And if you're a Christian living in Syria, don't you want to go to Canada? So we start a new life. Everybody wants to do that.
Yeah. So I'm still gonna ask you to look into your crystal ball for a moment. How do you think this is gonna play out in the immediate and any intermediate future in Syria?
I think this all depends on the allies now. Syria is not the player who can choose the path of this alone. So Iranians and the Russians have to decide if they are going to participate in a strong way in Syria. And both of them are already engaged in different conflicts. Russia has its own existential war, so it's understandable. But the Russians have set themselves certain limitations in Syria to not anger the US or to not anger Israel. Why Syria doesn't have S-300 systems? Is there any explanation for it? Why would Israel continue bombing Syria day and night, and the Russians do not give Syria the S-300? And the Syrians have paid the price. They have given the money even before the war started. Syrians bought the S-300 before the war started. The Russians sent the S-300 only when their cargo plane was gunned down by misfire by the Syrian army when the Israeli fighter jets hid behind the Russian cargo. And they sent it for, I think, 2-3 years, and then they took it back to Crimea. So the Russians also have to this is the criticism that you hear about Putin in Russia, that he had to do the offensive on Ukraine earlier. The radicals in Russia keep pressing Putin to nuke basically Ukraine, but I understand his strategic calculations, but these calculations take time, and the price is being paid by the people. in Syria. So when the Russians intervened in 2015, things have changed dramatically in 3 years. So they have the capability, they have the capacity. It needs a political decision because they already have the fighter jets near Idlib, basically. So it doesn't make sense for me watching these militants running like gorillas between Idlib to Aleppo, where there were 40-kilometer buffer zone between the Syrian army, and the fighter jets do not come and annihilate them. They have to embolden their presence in Syria. And if the Iranians, as the rumors say, they will send now thousands of soldiers to Syria from different nationalities, it's not enough, but it could be a good start to hold Hama in order to plan what's going to be next. I have no doubt in my mind, Carl, that Aleppo will be captured again by the Syrian army. It's not about the strength of the Syrian army or the other side's terrorism. No, the people in Aleppo, they don't want to live under Turkish occupation. This is an important factor for the people. Like, you can be silent for some time, but if the Syrian army plays clever and starts arming people inside Aleppo, sleeping cells, to randomly kill some of these militants in the streets and creating this impression that they're not safe inside the city. This is how intelligence work proceeds. This is how it should happen. To start creating a situation in the city that the militants are not safe, so you force them to retreat outside the city, because we want to spare destruction inside the city. Nobody wants to destroy the city again. People started reconstructing the country. So this has to be more on an intelligence level, trying to take out the militants from the city when they are unsafe to the suburbs, and eliminate them on the suburbs and engage with them on the suburbs with the air force, the artilleries. But they said this will take years. So I don't want to sell illusions to anyone and say, like, yeah, it's going to be liberated tomorrow. It's going to take years. But if they didn't get tired of fighting, then we don't have a choice but not to get tired. I'm tired. I'm really tired. I just want to live my life. I just want to know that my parents are safe, and I want to take care of my family, this and that. But there is something above me that I can't let it go. Like, this is my country, and what they're doing to the country is horrendous. So I can't. I haven't slept like for 5 days. Like, I do 5-6 podcasts per day with guests. Like, I just want to talk to more people and reach more people for them to understand what's happening. This is what I can do. So the rest is in the hands of the decision makers. Let's see how this will proceed. Hopefully, we will see each other in Aleppo and bring the proper flags of Syria, of the allied countries of Syria, and we will raise it in front of the Aleppo citadel, and not the Turkish flag. Putting the Turkish flag on Aleppo citadel, it's shameful. It's shameful for those who raise the Turkish flag. It's an occupation of the city by the Ottomans once again, and we can't tolerate that.
That was amazing that somebody actually did that, and then you have these people from Turkey proudly retweeting that and saying, "Oh, after so many years, Ottoman, the flag has returned to the Aleppo citadel." You're like, are you kidding me? Do you understand Syria is a sovereign nation? I mean, like, this is.
If you want to know about this more, if you want to know more about this, write the hashtag. The Aleppo in Turkish is Haleb. So HALEB or EP, and then Haleb 82. Search for it on X. 82 is the province number 82 of Turkey. Like, they have 81 provinces in Turkey. So the hashtag Haleb 82 is the #1 trend in Turkey, and the Turkish people are celebrating that they now have the 82nd province in Syria.
And this is in direct contravention to people who actually live in Aleppo. I mean, nobody wanted that. So yeah, I hope thank you very much, Kevork, again for making your time to enlighten us, to let us know what is the situation on the ground. And I hope the best, wish the best for your
Thank you.
family who are still in Syria, who have to face this reality. And I hope, as you say, one day we'll see the real Syrian flag flies over the citadel in Aleppo again.
God willing, we will. It's not a hope. We will.
Well, thank you. I probably gonna have you come back a couple of times because I think this is gonna be a drawn out process like the last war, unfortunately. And we are all keeping our eyes on this. And thank you again,
Thank you so much.
Kevork. And I know I will have you back. And everyone, for everyone listening, thanks for making your time. Thank you for the super sticker for Broken Inside, and thank you, Jimmy, for your super sticker. Until next time, we'll end the stream now, and because I want to respect Kevork's time. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.